And we're off. This is the great classic rock debate. I'm Kenny.
Paul with zero qualifications.
I'm Steve.
Steve in the Hard Rock Cafe Johannesburg
Yeah.
t-shirt.
He had to
I
fight
might
two
add.
lions and an elephant to get that shirt.
We
Well, I had a
talk
rhino as a
anything.
backup.
We talk anything and everything classic rock. We try to keep it interesting. We try to have fun. If you're watching right now, please like, comment, and subscribe. We will love you for that. Okay, last week, I should say last show because it was 2 weeks ago. Last time out, we talked about Metallica. And I enjoyed that discussion. It was great. Steve was out of town. He was in South Africa at the time on safari. However, he has watched that episode. And so he is going to add some thoughts. We are actually going to talk about the Eagles tonight. However, we're going to give Steve carte blanche to open things up and give some thoughts on Metallica. So, Steve, I turn it over to you.
All right, thank you. Well, like Kenny, I think you alluded to, Metallica was probably the biggest mistake of my life not getting into them earlier because I sort of prejudged them based upon the fan base and the people when I grew up in the late 80s, the people that wore the t-shirts. I always associated Metallica and Megadeth as sort of the same.
Right.
And we used a term called hoods. Those are the people that back home who we saw wearing the shirts. And I was, like in junior high, probably seventh grade. I think I was in seventh grade when And Justice
Oh my
for All
God.
came out. And there was always the same group of people always wearing the t-shirt from that album. And it wasn't until the Black Album came out on
91.
in 91 and they started playing the music videos for MTV and I thought, "Oh my God, what have I been missing this
Right.
entire time?"
Right. Right.
And so from there I picked up the rest of their albums and sort of the rest is history. I want to say this. So I know the Black Album is sort of divisive among, real
Very
hardcore
much so.
Metallica fans, but it expanded their base.
It
It got
ushered
people,
me in. It brought me in. I would have
and
never gotten there.
yeah, I love their entire catalog, except there's one album from theirs which I don't think we did touch on. One
Saint
album,
Anger.
Saint Anger, which to this day I do not like.
Right.
But
I
I
concur.
do like it, but go ahead. All right, go ahead.
so my favorite records from Metallica though are the Load and Reload as albums from the kind of the mid to late
Right
90s.
after the black. Yeah, mid
Yeah,
90s.
Yeah.
right after the Black. And somebody had mentioned this that Metallica sort of has that classical background and it was either I forget which one of you said it, but their earlier albums had a lot of movements and they were very epic songs. And they carried that over into the 90s even with on the Load and Reload albums. And so, for those of you who are not that familiar with it, there's a couple of tracks on there, probably some of my favorite of all time. Bleeding Me, which was off of
Oh,
Load,
load.
and then The Outlaw Torn, which is the last track on the album. And both of those are like just uh, master lessons in the wah pedal. The solos on that, they're like 8 or 9 minute songs,
Right.
and they just have these multiple different movements.
Right.
There's another song off of the album that came out in 2016, Hardwire for Self-Destruction, which if you are not familiar with that record, it's more of a return to their roots, which was sort of what they did
Okay.
with Death Magnetic. But the last song on the first album, it's called Halo on Fire. And that is an epic song it's got a really good melody, a really great riff, and it's probably my favorite solo of theirs of all time.
Okay.
So they do play it live, and if you're not familiar with it, check it out, Halo on Fire. The other thing I wanted to add, playing guitar, and obviously I'm not comparing myself in any means to somebody like Metallica, but the riff to Enter Sandman, it has a groove that is very very reminiscent of Whole Lot of Love. Um,
Yeah, I
it,
concur.
and so to me, it's kind of like their whole Enter Sandman is sort of their Whole Lot of Love, and just the opening riff of that. It's sort of in the same key. It's played the actual notes are very similar
Yeah,
to some extent, and
yeah.
so it is kind of like to me they are the greatest American rock band of all time, tied with who we're probably going to talk about here in a little bit as
The
well.
Eagles. Okay.
Yes, hard rock. And now, again, it's opinion, but if you look at just total album sales and the fact that Metallica, who first record 82, 83,
That sounds right.
Yeah,
um,
I think it was 81
So,
actually.
well, whatever it was. I mean,
Yeah,
so
because I
which
was
we,
back from Auburn, so by the third time, you and I were making fun of them at the Boynton Mall when you had
right,
won Mr. West Palm Beach. So that
right.
was whatever year that was.
I think it was
85.
80,
85.
80. Looking at my Apple
Cheat
iTunes,
sheet.
it says 83 for Kill 'Em
Okay,
All, but
okay.
the track on there, if I had to pick one track that's the best of that record, it's the Four Horsemen. Kind of a speed thrash song, but I think you would like it, Kenny, if you're not that familiar with it. It's
Okay.
got a little bit more
But
melody
if
to it.
if I had met you, Steve, when you were 20, okay, 20-year-old Steve, and I put you in a warehouse and I said, okay, if I'd have played a song off the Black, so Enter Sandman, and that would have entered The Call to Cthulhu or Ride the Lightning, you would have said it's not the same band.
Well, when I was 20, both of those, that was 97. So
Yeah, but okay, all
I
right,
knew they
earlier,
were the same
but
band.
you know what I'm saying? Like they sound like
Oh, I
the
agree. Yeah.
band had just changed but evolved. A lot of people go, they sold out, they sold out. They didn't sell out, they just got better. And and they could rock out, they could do the classical and Justice for All thing. They could, like Steve said, it's just like one long album.
Okay,
Yeah.
remember, Paul, remember last week when I gave this illustration, if you had a linear scale and at one end is hard rock and the other end is heavy metal, and as you slide from the hard rock end towards heavy metal, for me, it becomes less attractive. I'm not that much into heavy
Yes,
metal. All they
right.
did for that 91 album was they slid the scale away from the heavy metal towards the hard rock. They didn't sell out or
Right.
anything. They just slid
I
it.
agree.
It wasn't even that huge of a change, even though when you go back and listen to the 80s material, you can instantly see what they did differently.
Yeah.
But it was still, it wasn't really metal anymore, but it was still hard rock and it was high quality.
Yeah. I would still classify it as metal, but they went from being a thrash band to being more of a melodic
Fair enough.
kind of metal
Well,
band.
like
Yeah, I totally
the
agree.
other
It's like they
the other
slid
three
further
bands,
to the left.
thrash, like Slayer never changed from thrash, and Anthrax never
Nope.
strayed from the. Okay, so the two big bands, and I happen to like
Neither did
Megadeth
Megadeth.
more than Metallica. I love them just the slightest edge over Metallica, but very melodic. Both those, and same with Dave Mustaine. I mean, Hangar 18 is like a classic uh, Beethoven Bach type of sound. No,
Yep.
no, 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 no. Like it's like a.
It is, and I
It's not
wouldn't
this.
even. That is probably closer to like Metallica esque as well. Like Megadeth. I mean, they're a thrash band, but they have a little bit more like they're
Yeah,
not
but
like Slayer.
no, that's why I worship Megadeth. I mean, come on. So yeah, because they're more melodic. Like if you walked up to somebody in the mall and said, if you put a Slayer song and said, "Tell me the melody of this song," people are like, "I can't hear a melody." Right?
Exactly.
But if you put on Countdown to Destruction, da na 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 da na na na, dig a mortal man, right? It's got a melody. It's hard, it's fast, it's strong, just like Metallica.
Yep.
Got a melody, it's hard, it's strong. The melody is the.
Yeah. Hey, guys, I have to mention this really quick, too, because I thought of this last week after the show was over. And this deserves a mention. All three of us are sports fans. All three of us are college football fans. Okay. None of us are Virginia Tech fans. But putting that aside, Virginia Tech, they do this thing before the game when they're introducing the football team. They kill the lights in the stadium and start the intro to Enter Sandman. I'm telling you, it is awesome. It is so awesome. It really is. And it makes
Hey,
me
when they
jealous that we don't do it.
hey, when they kill the lights, does it hurt them?
It does.
Well, they do have a song. In fact, Metallica, their song "Hit the Lights," which is the first track off of their first album. I think they still open with that song. So just a
I haven't
little.
seen Metallica since Monsters of Rock. That's
Well, they
30
are on
years ago.
tour now, and they're actually coming to Denver here next month, and I'm probably going to go see them. As I think as you get older, you want to like I enjoy going to concerts, but I don't enjoy being around the people
Right.
and dealing with all the
And I
nonsense.
don't enjoy standing.
Correct.
My
I
knees are done. I have to be able to sit.
I want to sit, and the worst thing is when you pay for a ticket and then everybody else stands up, and you're like, well, now I guess I'm standing up the rest of
Right.
the show.
Right.
I'm get I'm getting old, but
Concerts are for youth. It's for the young people.
yeah,
It's not for,
I
yeah.
I do want to say how many bands have kind of created the same song three times in the sense that Metallica has the song Unforgiven, which is probably if I had to pick one song of theirs that's my favorite, would be the
Yeah.
Unforgiven. But then they had the Unforgiven 2 off of Reload.
Right.
And then they had the Unforgiven 3 off of Magnetic. And it's not quite the same, but it's again a slower, more ballady type song. But I was a little disappointed on their last album, 72 Seasons, that they didn't have Unforgiven 4.
Four. Right.
But just think about like what other band would do something like that? And they're different, but unique in the same. They're unique enough, but similar in all three different versions. So it's
So bottom line, you're a fan of Metallica. That's a joke, but yes.
yeah, absolutely. I
I
would
know, I'm
say
just teasing.
yeah. If I were to form a band now, or even if I had started a band past my one I played in college, it would probably be closer to sounding like Metallica in the mid '90s than anything else. So that's probably my um, the biggest impact that they've had on me. Just their kind of their mid '90s stuff. I'm such a fan of. I love thrash. Paul knows that I'm a big Pantera fan. Saw them many times when they were around. But the mid '90s Metallica for me is kind of the pinnacle of hard rock and metal.
Can't argue. All right. You guys want to move on to the Eagles?
Yeah, but one last thing, real quick, because Steve, he mentioned the association between Metallica and Megadeth. And Paul, that is so true. In the 80s, when we would see the Metallica losers with their long hair t-shirt, there would be an equal number also wearing Megadeth shirts. And the
Yes.
displays in the record stores would be right next to each other, a Metallica and a Megadeth display.
Here's an interesting thing about Megadeth. Do either one of you know what that term actually means?
I do not.
Steve?
No.
One day, my ex-girlfriend, Jennifer, you both know her, was yelling at me, how could we like a band that wants to kill everybody? I said, that's not where they got the name from. The name is from having so many nuclear weapons, we can destroy the earth many, many, many times over. Hence the term Megadeth. Like we have this superfluous amount of nuclear weapons that can destroy the world. Hence the term. Go ahead.
Well, where did Metallica get their name from?
I don't know.
It began as Metallica.
Yeah, Metallica.
Yeah.
It had a box that had Lika, Metallica. No, I'm just kidding. But no, Megadeth. Love them.
I mean,
All right,
yeah, can you think of a name more metal than Metallica or Megadeth or
No, that's no, it's
Right,
awesome.
right.
and they're still I mean, it's been 42
Yes,
years
yes.
and they are still together. I mean, that's
Pretty
think about
amazing.
that in the context of, 20 years ago we were talking about the Rolling Stones still being together after 40 years.
Right.
Like, that's just
Right.
amazing.
And you have to add this. I mean, to that statement you just made, you have to add this, and that is they didn't turn into a pop band as they got older, because that's what they all do. All the rock bands, as they get over 40, they
Make
start,
ballads.
yeah, ballads and pop songs, and they just don't
It's
rock anymore.
interesting,
And in
Steve, that
fact,
you go ahead.
well, I was gonna say they reverted back to their old former selves with their last
Yes.
two albums, Death Magnetic and Season 72 or 72 Seasons. They're much more thrash oriented albums.
Well, here's what Steve, when you said Rolling Stones, think about what Rolling Stones and Metallica have in common. They both suffered a death of a band member early on.
Oh yeah,
Oh, okay.
Yeah, Metallica's bass player, what, Cliff Burton, right?
Cliff Burton.
Fell out of the,
Right.
so,
In
and then
fact,
Brian Jones, of course.
yeah, so Jason Newsted was the bass player who replaced him and his first record was on and for Justice for All.
And Justice for All. Yeah, that's right.
And so if you listen to that record, the one thing that is really noticeable about it is there's not a lot of bass in it. And they intentionally, during the mixing of it, reduced the bass to a point that you could barely hear it at all. And a lot of it, I think, was just kind of their interpersonal feelings, not necessarily towards Jason Newsted
No. They were
personally,
hurting.
but they were still trying to kind of get over the death of Cliff Burton from it. And so if you listen to that record and then listen to the next record, the Black Album,
Wow,
it's a
yeah.
lot more prominent, the bass on it. In fact, like if you listen to Injustice for All, a lot of times you can't even hear any bass lines. It's sort of it's weird, and they have since remastered it, and the
Oh, they
bass
did.
is more prominent. Yeah.
I'll have to go. I'm gonna go buy that tonight.
Yeah.
I
So
didn't know that.
it's yeah, it's very interesting. But I love the fact, like, as I think Paul, you had mentioned on it, and Justice for All, it's like one long record, just like it's a symphony, not a
Yes.
symphony of destruction, but
Good one, Steve. Steve
but
interwove a joke with Megadeth.
every one of those songs kind of just weaves in together, and yeah, it's a fantastic piece, but not my favorite record of theirs. I mean, it's great.
Oh,
I give it a 10 out of 10. But for me, the
oh,
the
yeah.
90s Metallica, they go to 11.
This record goes to 11, doesn't it? All right, you guys want to switch over to Eagles or
Okay.
what, Kenny?
Yeah, I think we can go. This will probably continue on into the next
Yes.
episode, which is fine. But we'll go ahead and start. Okay, which was going to be tonight's topic, but we started with this other thing, and this.
Oh, so let me go first, and then you two correct, and then I'll shut up. So the Eagles formed as a bluegrassy type. Hey, correct me. And
They
then, all right, hold on. Let me just say it, and then you guys go.
Go ahead.
And then that one dude left, and then they brought in
Joe Walsh.
Joe Walsh to change. Did the band consciously say we want to be
Yes.
slightly more edgy?
Yes.
That's all I'm saying. You two go.
So
Okay.
Go ahead.
Bluegrassy is not the term that I would
country
use.
rock.
Yeah, country
I
rock.
was wrong. Yeah.
You know, the term that we're using these days, even though this term did not exist in the 70s, they're using the term West Coast rock. It doesn't necessarily mean
I
the same
hate
thing
that.
as country rock, but it wraps a bunch of things together. And what it means is bands like the Eagles or Fleetwood Mac, whatever, they were pop rock bands with enough elements of rock to be called a rock band, but they weren't hard rock bands. And they were still musically complex enough that they were including other influences, like the Eagles had a strong country influence there. So that term is become popular these days. They didn't call it that in the 70s.
Well, if you listen to a lot of interviews with Glenn Fry, like he specifically did say, like, we wanted to be a country rock band. That was their kind of how they started. I mean, they were Linda Ronstadt's backup band.
Correct. And she had a strong country element
Yes, she did.
to her music. Yeah.
And then, yeah. And so, Paul, you're right. So they really wanted to go to a much more turn into a rock band. And so
Right.
there was a lot of tensions at the time. Bernie Leadon, who was, I think he started, like, he was in the Flying Burrito Brothers, but he was still the one that was holding on to the country rock aspect of it.
Right.
And it's well known that a lot of them didn't get along, and Glenn Frey was kind of known as the leader of the band, and it kind of had a come to blows moment, and they
Right.
basically kicked Bernie out because because of the country aspect, and they were like, let's go get Joe Walsh. They wanted
Well,
to.
now
Right.
let's talk about that. The date was Joe Walsh. I mean, he's a Mount Olympus of players. I'm just saying, was he that back then? He had some hits, James Gang, and his own stuff, that kind of thing. But was he on? Was there a list, a short list? What? How did that happen?
That I don't know. I don't know if
I don't know either, but he was a known free agent, and he also had that reputation for being the, you know,
Bad boy.
free, yeah, the unattached, free flowing kind of dude who could do whatever, and he was so talented, and his addition into the Eagles, it was a monumental shift in their creative direction and their sound and their style, which, listen, really good bands change directions from time to time. They don't just keep
Absolutely.
doing the same thing. So, if you would ask a lot of Eagles fans prior to that, what would you think if on the next album the Eagles shifted in a hard rock direction and brought in a lot of heavy guitar? Most of them would say, "Oh, it's not going to work." But these guys were geniuses, and yeah, it worked.
It's amazing that like if you're Joe Walsh, you could come in the band and I wasn't there and I'm like, hey dude, wanna join the band? Okay, cool. What are you gonna do? I'll just play lead guitar. You guys get the melodies and the stuff, and I'll throw in some crap here and there. But I just gotta sit back and play lead. That's it. You got a bunch of super talented guys
Right.
in this band,
well,
right? Like
what's amazing is the fact that they went through kind of a handful of breakups or vacations, as they call
Right.
them. But
vacations.
Joe Walsh does not appear to be like the cause of any of it.
Right.
I mean, he wasn't the reason in the 70s they went for more rock-oriented sound. They wanted to go that way, so they hired Joe Walsh. And then when they broke up in the early 80s, I think it was really Glenn and Don Henley were kind of probably sick of it. I mean, they'd been together for, 10 plus years and
Yeah.
kind of get sick of one another at some
Yeah,
point.
of course.
And he's still playing with them. I mean, the Eagles are still they got their residency in Vegas, which to me it's not really the Eagles anymore. Once Glenn Frey passed away,
Right.
it really wasn't the same band anymore. But Joe Walsh is still playing with them. So
Well, tell me about Life's Been Good. That's a Joe Walsh song and not
Correct.
an Eagles song? Is that right?
correct.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct.
But they play it, okay. I was
Yeah,
curious.
if you see them in concert, I mean, I've seen them a couple times. I mean, they'll play a 3-hour set, and they typically would
Easily,
play,
yeah.
two-thirds of it were Eagles songs, and another third were solo hits from all the various different members. So.
Right. Right. And since you mentioned Joe Walsh and Life's Been Good, and by the way, that was on the soundtrack of that movie called FM.
Oh God.
Did you guys ever see that movie?
Was Steely Dan's song for that movie
Correct.
too?
The FM,
Yeah, yeah,
yes.
yeah.
Yeah. The movie, in my
I don't
opinion,
think I
is
saw
awful. It's got one of the best soundtracks ever.
it.
No,
But the movie is so awful. Wow.
well,
It's
the
View to a
sequel is
Kill.
much better. AM.
Very, very good.
No, but
Right.
it's View to a Kill. It's like the best Bond song on the worst Bond movie.
Right.
That's
Right.
my
Right.
opinion.
But he did that song. It was like a side project. He was with the Eagles, but it was a Joe Walsh solo song that went on that soundtrack. And then the following year, he did the song In the City for the movie The Warriors,
Warriors, yeah.
which then appeared the following year on the Eagles' The Long Run album.
Yep.
Wow.
And I think it's the same version. I don't think there's any difference.
Like I played that song "Life's Been Good" for my daughter, and I'm like, just listen to what he's saying.
Right.
And it's snarky sarcasm.
It is.
Every round it's changed. It's different. I haven't changed. That kind of thing.
Right.
It's brilliant. It's brilliant.
Now, Paul, do your kids like the Eagles?
They've only heard that song, and I'm gonna say no. I mean, no, it's not because they don't, because they have very strange music taste. The
Yeah, because
kids
that's
now, and it's done on purpose. They're destroying, and I literally mean destroying children today with music and movies and the internet. Destroying. It's on purpose. Go ahead.
well, when I discovered I mean, I became a big Eagles fan probably in junior high, and your kids are, of that age or if
High
not
school, junior high, yeah.
older. So it's sort of surprising that kids today are not discovering
None of it.
that music. And because I had my parents' 8 track, and I listened. We had
Wow.
Hotel California, and I wore that thing out, and I was always a fan of classic rock, starting around that period. But yeah,
But
it's a
yeah.
travesty that kids are not being exposed to that type of music.
Like Lou Pearlman and people like that with all those stupid boy bands, and they realize they if you listen to Rick Beato talk about this ad infinitum,
Yeah.
the garbage is out there, just pure effing garbage. Like
Yeah.
I'd rather listen to Kenny take a dump, the sound from that, than to hear like Sabrina Carpenter and Taylor Swift. These people, it's just awful. It's just
Yeah.
god awful.
Well,
And the
it is
weekend, other people
awful.
like it's garbage.
But I
What?
will say this, but 30 years ago, 35 years ago, I was aware of what was popular, modern pop music at the time, but I was also aware of what was made 20 years prior to that.
Right, but there's no alternative to hearing Sabrina Carpenter and all these and Olivia Rodrigo. There's no alternative.
Well, I think there is. I don't know how they get
No, no,
exposed.
but I'm just telling you. I have kids. I listen to what they listen to. I hear it.
Well, they have see, when we grew up, your only option was what was played on the radio, which was probably
Yep,
5 channels, and
it's
whatever
that. Yep,
albums you could afford to buy.
Right.
yes.
Now you have access to literally everything that's
Everything.
ever been recorded,
Correct.
Rick
essentially for
Beato said
free,
that too.
or
Yeah, Rick
for a
Beato said
small
it too.
subscription. You go on YouTube. So that's why it's just hard for me to understand why these like kids today are not discovering, you know,
They're incredibly stupid. Is
well,
the main thing.
like
I'm serious.
have your kids heard Hotel California?
No, I play. You know me. I play something. I make them listen. They don't really have a choice.
Yeah.
I say this is a dictatorship, and I'm Dick. So, but and every once in a while, if they hear a song like the song "Pop Music" by M, my daughter
Wow.
heard that. She's singing it. It's a really great song. It's a catchy, but
How did she hear it?
it's one of the shows she watches. They played it on there.
Oh, wow.
What song?
It's called
Pop
Pop
Music by M. That was from 79.
Okay, I'm not.
It's a super catchy, but it's a corny. I mean, I like it, but
I like it. Yeah. Yeah.
but is it just intentional? There's no way if the Eagles would come out today, they would sell 5 albums. That's it. Same with Led Zeppelin. I'm not trying to rip on the Eagles.
No, 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 no.
Right.
Yeah, unfortunately, I agree with you because I can't imagine like I think kids' minds would be blown if they were to, listen to some of these great songs. Like you put on Hotel California, I just think I think they would be blown away by the quality.
Yeah, if there's not a girl with her boobies shaking and her butt hanging around and dressed scantily and dancing on Ferraris, it doesn't exist. Like the music is secondary. You could just have you and me and Kenny could do a drum machine. I love to dance in the street. It's the number one hit, right? Like that. That's all
But
it is.
MTV doesn't exist, so where are they watching these on YouTube?
Yeah, YouTube and whatever, their brains have been conditionally
They have to be
rewired.
hearing it on the radio too, though.
They don't listen to the radio really, I don't think.
I think they just listen to Spotify.
Well, they listen to whatever, like YouTube and stuff. It's
Well,
just garbage.
whatever they and their peers, they're all
Yeah.
listening to something that's playing current contemporary.
Yeah, but it's not the radio. I mean, radio
Okay.
is dead.
All right. Fair enough.
Other than talk radio and
All right.
sports.
And by the way, Steve, you talked about how nowadays they have access to virtually every song ever recorded.
He's
I
right.
don't know if you ever went through this. I'll assume that you did, but I know Paul and I did. And that is, as a teenager, you had this favorite song and you had to wait by the radio,
Oh,
hoping that they're going to play it, so I can hear it again.
oh yeah. I
Hey,
remember one summer I sat by the radio for weeks because we were going on a road trip and I wanted music to listen to. So I recorded songs off the radio.
Had a
good boy.
little handheld cassette tape recorder and parked it right next to the radio. And
Oh, I had a fancier device. Like it was built, I had a cassette that was built into the
okay,
radio. So
gotcha.
I
Like
didn't
a
have to hold
boombox
the
type of
mic
thing.
up. But it was something, something very similar.
Yeah.
But I'd catch the lead in from the DJ.
Right. Of course. Yeah, that's part of it.
But you know what's really weird? This is going to sound stupid, but it's more democratic now. There's a lot more bands getting out there. But the question is going through the detritus and the flats of Jepson to find them. For instance, a friend of mine from Belgium sent me this Viagra Boys. They're like punk. And this guy's a trip and a half, this lead singer. I think I sent you guys the video for it last week. And it's just like this band's out probably touring 200 times a year, playing 200 times. And it's the only way now. It's the
Yeah.
only way because no one's getting this big contract and,
Well, you bring
go
up
ahead,
an
Steve.
interesting point because if you look at the Eagles and you look at their discography, bands like that released an album just about every year or every
Yep.
other year. And all they
Right.
did
Yep.
was tour. But they made a lot of money. Now bands, they make all their money from touring, which is not a lot, but I don't even know if they're releasing that much they're not releasing really records. But are they putting out an album a year? Now it seems like a band will put out an album, wait 5 years, put out another one.
Yeah.
I think a lot of it depends on the deal. Like The Darkness, one of my favorite bands, they're putting out an album every year and a half now. And I'm happy they are. It forces them to be creative, forces them to go on a tour, right? But I had something really. Oh,
Well, there's no gatekeepers anymore. So it is much more
if you don't sign a
democratic.
deal, that's right. If you don't sign a deal, you are right.
But that's
Like-
the problem. It's 1% makes 99% of the money.
Yes, I mean, as far as the bands, I agree. It's like I think I told this on a show before. A friend of mine used to be a manager for this part for Urge Overkill. I don't know if you remember that band.
Right.
Yep.
But he said when they signed their deal, it wasn't just album sales anymore. The record label got a cut of their
Sure.
ticket sales on the road.
Yep.
Wow.
I would have said, over my dead body, would you ever touch that? Like, I wouldn't sign the deal with you. I
just
don't
think
care.
I think it depends. If the record company is paying to promote I don't know if they do this or not, or did this, but if they were paying to promote the tour and fronting a lot of that money, then I have no issue with it.
Yeah.
That's fine. I agree. I'm just saying I would sign that deal. That's all.
Yeah, and you would probably, and then if every record company was like, no, this is the way it works, then you're kind of out of luck.
No, but then you go out on the road and you do what all these bands are doing. Like
well,
the
they don't
Viagra
make any
Boys.
money.
Okay, guys, 2-minute warning. 2-minute warning.
What band today is making, unless you're
Think about
selling
let
arenas.
me. What's the greatest exception to what you're saying of all time? No one's even in the same galactic universe. What band tours the most of any other band ever?
The Grateful Dead.
Very good.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
That's why they're rich as shit. Because
Well,
they never.
They're
Yes,
the
they
exception
tour.
to. They're the
That's what I'm
exception.
trying to say, though. They believed in their music and they did their thing. Good for them.
Yeah, but
Good
not
point.
everybody has a fan base that's willing to go listen to them for 3 days straight.
Well, why are they willing to go listen to it for 3 days? Because they're good.
You want the
I don't
honor?
particular-
Because
No,
they just
I
want to
don't
sit
care.
around and do drugs.
Yeah, but his point is valid. For whatever reason, that segment of the fandom is loyal and committed,
yeah.
and
But there are bands that can do that. Not every Taylor Swift. I couldn't name one of her songs, but apparently she probably fits into that category.
Yeah, but the difference between Taylor Swift, who's got 50 #1 hits or whatever she has,
right.
The Grateful Dead had 2 hits on the radio: Alabama Getaway and Gray Zone or Gray Thing, whatever it was called.
Touch of
Touch
Grey.
of Grey.
Touch of Grey.
And neither one of those were really even a big hit.
They're terrible songs too.
Right,
Hey, sorry guys.
Right.
But it's just fascinating now. The industry is just
Well, most bands today cannot fill up a club. They're either
Yes.
you have 2 levels: club level, who are putting in 20 people into a club, or an arena show. That's it. There's not really, if you're in between,
there's
if you're less than an
there's the-
arena, you're not making any money. How do you support yourself and go on tour by selling, 50 tickets a night at 20
well,
bucks?
that's what our band that we both love, Power Man 5000, does.
I know, but
That's what they do, and I worship them for doing it.
I do too, but they can't be. But I'm saying for most bands, new bands, it's
They're not becoming
sustainable.
millionaires. No, you're right. They're not becoming
They
millionaires.
kind of made
but
a little bit of money back